December 17th, 1944. 6 a.m. Melde Crossroads, Belgium. The cold had settled deep into the Ardennes. Not the sharp chill of an early winter, but a penetrating, bone-deep freeze that turned breath into vapor and steel into glass. The thermometer nailed to the side of a ruined farmhouse read 18 degrees Fahrenheit, though no one needed numbers to understand the cold. It was the kind that slowed fingers, stiffened muscles, and made metal creak when handled. Snow drifted across the road in thin sheets, driven by a light wind that hissed through bare trees and over abandoned vehicles frozen where they had been left days earlier. Oberleutnant Werner Potsky crouched low near the tree line, gloved hands wrapped around his MP40, eyes scanning the darkness ahead. He was 42 years old, a veteran of campaigns in Poland, Russia, and France, a man who had learned to read a battlefield by sound as much as sight. The silence before dawn was familiar to him, a fragile stillness that usually meant either exhaustion or an ambush. His patrol, 11 men from the 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte, Adolf Hitler, moved in a loose wedge formation behind him, boots crunching softly in the snow, despite their care. They had been told the crossroads was lightly defended. Intelligence from intercepted radio traffic and prisoner interrogations suggested American supply troops held the area, Echelon units shaken by the surprise offensive that had erupted the day before. The plan was simple: probe the position, scatter any resistance, seize the crossroads, and open another artery for the armored columns racing west toward the Meuse. Potsky had executed dozens of such missions. Against green troops or logistics units, they were rarely dangerous. Dangerous meant tanks, artillery, or air power. Looks like nobody thought we'd see this here, right? What a surprise. Then he heard the sound. It was wrong, high-pitched, mechanical, sustained. Not an engine revving, not tracked armor, not artillery being repositioned. It was closer to the whine of an aircraft engine spooling up, the kind Potsky had heard countless times while looking skyward for Jabos. Except this sound was coming from ground level, steady and unmistakable, slicing through the pre-dawn quiet like a blade. He froze, raised a fist, and the patrol stopped dead in their tracks. Instinct kicking in from years of training. Potsky tilted his head, listening. The sound came again, slightly louder now, accompanied by the clatter of metal on metal. Somewhere ahead, something mechanical was alive when nothing else in the frozen forest should have been. He motioned 2 men forward, signaling them to scout low and slow. The rest of the patrol spread out, rifles up, breath held, snow crunch forgotten as adrenaline burned away the cold. Through the darkness, none of them could see the shape waiting at the crossroads. It looked like a truck, olive drab, 6 wheels, canvas, cab. The kind American supply convoys used by the thousands. A GMC CCKW, parked at an angle beside the road as if abandoned in haste, but the canvas bed had been removed, replaced by a reinforced steel platform bolted directly to the frame. Mounted on it was something that did not belong on any truck operating on land in Europe. A naval anti-aircraft gun, long-barreled, dark with oil, its breech open as sailors worked around it with practiced efficiency. The gun was a 3-inch, 50-caliber naval weapon, the same type that bristled from American destroyers in the Atlantic and Pacific. Designed to throw 50-pound shells into the path of incoming aircraft, it now sat on Belgian soil, aimed horizontally down a snow-covered road. The truck's engine idled steadily, its low rumble feeding power to the traverse mechanism. Ammunition crates lay open nearby, brass casings gleaming faintly under a hooded lantern. Chief Petty Officer James Michael Donnelly lowered his binoculars and exhaled slowly. He was 30 years old, from Boston, Massachusetts, with a weathered face that had aged quickly in 2 years of war. The Navy had taught him to remain calm under pressure, to treat combat as a series of procedures rather than moments of fear. He could see movement now, dark figures advancing in textbook infantry formation through the trees. Germans, not running, not careless. Veterans. Surface targets, he said quietly, his voice steady despite the cold. Range 400 yards. High explosive. The crew responded instantly. 5 sailors, each moving with the muscle memory drilled into them aboard pitching decks and under live fire. One man rammed a shell into the breech, another slammed it shut. The gun captain checked elevation. The driver leaned forward, hands tight on the wheel, waiting for the order to move if needed. Donnelly raised one gloved hand, paused, then brought it down. "Let's get this fire started." The night shattered. The 3-inch gun roared, a concussive blast that lit the crossroads with a blinding flash. The recoil rocked the truck, suspension groaning under the sudden force. 400 yards away, the shell struck the frozen ground in the midst of the advancing patrol and detonated with an explosion that belonged to another battlefield entirely. Earth, snow, and fragments erupted outward in a violent sphere. The blast wave punched through trees and bodies alike, flattening men who had survived artillery barrages and tank assaults. Potsky never heard the shell coming. One moment he was turning to shout a warning. The next, the world became fire and pressure. Men vanished. Others were thrown backward as if struck by an invisible giant. The sound was overwhelming, a deep, chest-crushing thunder that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Training evaporated in the face of something no infantryman expected to encounter at dawn on a forest road. The second round fired before the echoes of the first had faded. The sailors worked with terrifying efficiency. Load. Lock. Fire. The gun traversed smoothly. Its naval mount, designed for precision against aircraft moving hundreds of miles per hour, against men on the ground. It was almost unfair. Each 50-pound shell detonated with a blast radius, measured in tens of yards, shredding bodies and trees alike. The forest became a storm of splinters, metal, and snow. Within seconds, the SS patrol ceased to exist as a coherent unit. Those not killed outright were stunned, bleeding, or screaming. Veterans of the Eastern Front broke and ran, instincts screaming at them to escape something that defied every tactical expectation they had learned. For men survived long enough to retreat into the trees, fleeing blindly, leaving weapons and wounded behind. None looked back. Donnelly lowered his hand after the 5th round. Smoke drifted across the road, illuminated by the faint gray of approaching dawn. The gun crew paused, listening, ready to fire again if movement resumed. It didn't. The only sounds were the crackle of burning debris and the distant echo of the gunshot rolling through the forest like thunder. "Cease fire," Donnelly said quietly. In less than 4 minutes, the crossroads had been secured by a vehicle never intended to fight on land. Word of what had happened would spread through German units faster than any official intelligence report. Men would struggle to describe it, reaching for language that barely existed in their doctrine. A truck that fired like a warship, a supply vehicle that delivered artillery-level destruction, a weapon that appeared without warning and vanished. Before retaliation, by the end of the day, German soldiers would give it a name. The Devil truck had arrived.